Hi, I'm Dr. Adam Harcourt, and today I wanted to go over my brand new book, Mastering Migraine. And specifically, I wanted to talk about why I wrote it the way we did and what it looks like and all that good stuff. So the first thing I really wanted to point out was the fact that it's very, very thin, right? This is on purpose. I've had so many migraine patients say, I just don't have the time or the patience or really the energy to go through a long textbook that's on migraine to get better. And so what we did is we took all the thousands and thousands of hours we've had working with migraine patients in the office, all the thousands of research papers that we've looked at, that we've used for the program, and we've condensed it and made it an extremely succinct, easy to read, easy to understand book on migraine, right? My goal with this is that you don't have to spend a tremendous amount of time going through all the research like I did, and you still will know a ton about migraine and how to start getting better today. Not tomorrow, not next week, but I want you to know more than basically anybody else about migraine. That's the goal in the book. And so today I just want to go over a couple of the chapters and why I wrote it this way. So the first part of the book is more for migraine patients. So it goes over the big picture ideas and then some of the things you can do right away, some of the things you want to look at in your everyday life to start addressing migraine. The second part of the book goes a little bit more in detail into things like neurological dysfunction and genetics, so that if you're a practitioner or if you just want to learn more about it, you can get it all right here in the end of the book, but it's not necessary to start making changes today, right? So the very beginning of the book was written, the foreword was written by Dr. Frederick Carrick. He's a researcher at both Harvard and the University of Cambridge in the United Kingdom. And he's been a mentor of mine for many, many years now. And he's one of the ones that started pioneering the use of neuroplasticity to make changes in people's brains. And in migraine, as you'll learn, that's extremely important because migraine ultimately is a neurological dysfunction that leads to the progression or leads to the cause of migraine, which can manifest most commonly as head pain, but also as things like dizziness or hemiplegic migraine or ocular migraine. So we go over all that in the book. Right? At the very beginning, you can see the background goes over why I got into this, how it's almost on accident, but then we ran with the things that we were finding in the office, and at first thought we found something brand new, and then it turns out it was in the research, but they weren't sure what to do with this new understanding of migraine, and that's where we kind of got started with all this. Then we get into what is migraine, right? A very short, easy to read chapter on what's actually going on, right? Is it vascular, right? Is it your blood vessels? Is it in your brain? Is it a combination? What's really the deal with this, right? Is it nutrition, okay? And so if you can understand the basics of what is migraine, that makes our treatment methods, it makes our approach to it all start to make a lot more sense. We then get into how it's currently treated. Most of you are well aware of what's going on with current treatment, so you don't have to get too much into that. Then we go over the new model of migraine. What is happening with migraine and how is it different? This is something that is really brand new. I talk to doctors all over the world and everybody has their idea of what's going on, but the succinct understanding of the neurological basis of migraine is really a newer type of approach, specifically the way we understand it now. Then we get into my bucket theory, which goes over why migraine sometimes will respond to one treatment, and other times it takes a whole litany of different treatments, therapies to make a change. All right, it's really, really important that we understand why that works differently for each person. We then get into things like concussion and migraine. One thing that I see very, very often is people that have a concussion then get diagnosed with migraine with no history, no reason for really having migraine, but they get diagnosed because it meets the criteria technically, but isn't actually a proper diagnosis of migraine because that's not what they have. So we see some patients that have migraine, have a concussion, and get worse. That's one thing. We have the second scenario where they're predisposed to it genetically. They haven't had one before, but the concussion fills up their bucket enough, so now they start having migraine. And then the third is where you don't actually have migraine, but you're diagnosed with it because it fits the bill the best. Okay, so I think it's really important to parse those out and understand which is which. Right? Then we get into dizziness and migraine. So some patients have vestibular migraine, some patients have dizziness associated with migraine, and some people get things like vertigo that doesn't cause migraine, but fills up the bucket and makes you more likely to have it. Right? Neurological dysfunction. Now, I will admit this is one of the longer chapters that we have in our book, and the reason for that is it's different than what anybody else is talking about at this point, okay? Because the genetic underpinning, that is well documented in the literature. It's a newer concept, which is why we're discussing it, but what's not well documented is what the heck we do with this new knowledge. And that's what we've been doing for years and years now when we are treating our migraine patients. So the neurological dysfunction goes through what's already known and then how we're applying that differently, and how our entire paradigm and treatment protocol is completely different than how migraine is currently being treated. So this one will take a little bit longer, but I promise it's worth the read. Then we get into things like genetics and nutrition, things that you're somewhat familiar with, and those are shorter chapters just because you need to be familiar with them. But for example, there's tons of books written on nutrition and migraine. I didn't want to go over things that you guys have heard about before, right? This is supposed to be brand new, simple, easy to use things. And then we go over musculoskeletal stress. The reason I did that is because there's all these different things that you can do from a treatment standpoint, things like acupuncture and massage and chiropractic and trigger point therapy. All these things have efficacy. All these things have been shown to help, but for some people they don't do anything, right? And it's not because it was a bad therapy, it's because that wasn't exactly the thing that that patient needed at this moment. So one of the final chapters is on hormones, and the reason that I wanted to talk about hormones is that many patients are told, well, I just got put on birth control, or they're giving me tons of progesterone, and all these things have reasons for doing them. But what I find works the best is evaluating the entire hormonal system, figuring out where the imbalances are, and then addressing those directly. So not just trying to give more or less of a certain hormone. What we want to do is address the entire system, and that's extremely important. So I hope you enjoy the book. I hope you get through it very quickly. It's something that you can do that shouldn't take more than a day or so, right? It's a really easy read. And then also use it as a guidebook, right? So once you've gone through it, you say, what was he talking about with dizziness, or I kind of bumped my head, what's the deal there? You can go back to it, have a really quick reference, and get on with your life, right? You don't need to invest tens and thousands of hours into trying to understand this better. So I hope you enjoy it. I'm really looking forward to your questions and your comments, so please let me know if there's anything that you're curious about, because I'm really hoping that this sparks a whole new conversation and a whole new understanding of migraine. So I hope you really enjoy, and we'll be back soon.